Welcome to the SJX Podcast. I'm Brandon Moore, and today we're joined by Sylvain Berneron, a designer who launched his namesake brand 2 years ago. After launching with an asymmetrical time-only watch in two sizes with two different movements, the brand recently debuted its first complication, the Quantième Annuel. Sylvain, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Brandon. Thank you for having me.
I think many of our listeners would recognize your products having seen them on Instagram, but they might not know that much about your background. What were you doing before getting into the watch business, and what led you to leave your corporate career and launch your own brand?
I see, this is a deep question. I grew up being taught fine arts by my mother, who was an amateur painter. So the roots of the artistic education run quite far back in my life. I studied fine arts in high school and then later on industrial design in university. I started my career in the German car industry, which I worked on for 6-7 years. Then I went back to Paris, had a transition period where I was doing both watchmaking and car design. I was freelancing for some brands at the Richemont Group. And now I've been doing a full transition in the watchmaking industry since 2014. So it's more than a decade already, almost 12 years. And 4 years of that period have been dedicated to the creation of Berneron SA, which is the brand we currently work on these days. So that's the background, very condensed, I would say, in 2 minutes.
How much overlap is there between like the fine art education that you received and the industrial design? Is that a common path that people take?
Actually, not. The fine art. I love fine art. In my case, it is more painting, drawing, and sculpture, which are the three disciplines my mom was working on. I love that very much, except I lose focus very quickly when it doesn't have an end goal of building something or like painting something just for the sake of painting one prototype picture. I lose the focus pretty quickly, which is, and that has been solved with industrial design because the whole creation process is heavily linked to a project that is bigger than only my individual. It involves teamwork and brand building, and most of the time a deep knowledge about manufacturing techniques, costs involved, timing, etc., etc. And all of a sudden, the creative act is a lot more deliberate and strategic, which is something that I'm more attracted to rather than sculpting something just to express my opinion on a particular subject.
So turning our attention to the outcome of all of this work, then the brand itself, I think something people always wonder is what kind of investment does it take to launch a watch brand? I think everybody kind of has in their minds a secret plan to launch a watch brand and wonder how they might be able to bring that to fruition. Can you speak to the investment required in launching a brand in this day and age?
Mm-hmm. So I've heard 3 different methods to launch watch brands, which I can quickly describe. I have friends of mine, which I won't name because I'm not sure if they want me to disclose that information, but who have created, for example, a watch brand, still alive for almost 10 years now, which has been created with 12,000 Swiss francs to begin with, and the rest has been found through crowdfunding at the time of Kickstarter 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So that brand has been created with 12,000 Swiss francs. That's, I would say, the bottom bracket of the echelon. It has to be said, I'm not sure if it's still possible to do that today, but I'm not sure. Nothing is impossible, so I should not say never. The top bracket of the echelon is industrial people who already own companies, who gather together, put on the table 10, 15, 20, 30 million Swiss francs or more, and start with a very heavy machine, which involves the implication of multiple companies. This is so. With these two examples that I gave, you have the full bracket, I would say, of where you can position yourself. I don't think there is a right and wrong recipe to do it. Every puzzle is different. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses. And if anybody listening wants to create a watch brand, we all have a limit to our budget. Everybody has a budget. Even Jeff Bezos has a budget. It might be much bigger than the one we have, but he has a budget, effectively. So in my case, I consider to be in the high-end bracket of what I would call a self-founded project, because I was frankly stupid enough to risk 15 years of my personal savings into this. So I've invested in 2 installments of 500,000 Swiss francs. So I've invested in total 1 million Swiss francs into my project to develop a caliber which I fully own the intellectual property of. And on top of that, I decided to pay the tooling and to make it entirely in precious metal. And the combination of these 2 factors is what sent the budget through the roof. And the level of risk was, how can I say, in conjunction with that amount of money, because effectively making asymmetric calibers in the shape that I made, it's either go big or go home, in the sense like either I sell the watches and I recover the investment, and if I don't sell the watches, I can't even recycle or sell it back to somebody else. So it was really maximum spending, maximum risk at my scale. I could not have risked more than what I did, because it also engaged my professional reputation on the line. Keep in mind, I was at that moment in time a board member at Breitling. So if that project had miserably failed, I could also have put in danger my professional reputation in the industry.
Yeah, it sounds like what the actor Ryan Reynolds would call maximum effort in terms of your approach to it. And it sounds like now there's about 10 people in the brand currently, yes. if I understand. Okay, so what did hiring 10 people unlock for you that you could not do solo or just with like 1 or 2 partners? What does that 10-person size enable you to do?
It unlocks spread and depth as well. So I've been able to do every step of the project at a scale of 50 watches. So to produce the first 50 Mirage for a product which is creatively very unconventional, but technically simple in the sense that it is a 3-hand watch. So we are talking 135 components in the movement, a small quantity, close partners that I knew for a long time. So this is something, it has been one of the most mentally and physically demanding exercise of my life, but I was able to manage on my own. When you go into the Quantième or the stone dials or developing multiple calibers in parallel, I would, even my entire life would not be enough to in order to cope with that level of solicitation on a daily basis. So, which is why I had to hire people. And now the difference, before I had multiple hats on my head. I was one day a designer, one day somebody who acquires the components, somebody who does the legal, the commercial, etc., etc. Now we have clear departments. So I have somebody responsible of the atelier, somebody responsible of the operation. We have the logistic, we have the finance, we have the clienteling, we have the design, because I have somebody now who takes the time to make all the very precise DXF and files that we need in order to order our components, because I no longer have the time to execute in the nitty-gritty details, the creative outputs that we want to translate. I have somebody in charge of the brand, etc., etc. So we grow like this, and the goal is that now one individual is responsible of one skill, I would say, in the company. And that person, if we keep growing, will live the same process that I lived, and will have to duplicate him or herself into a team with multiple projects within. So it is, I would say, like I always compare a company like a tree. The leaves outside are the PR and the website and the product, etc., which we have to grow. And you have the roots as well, which you don't see, which are the investments of the furniture, the building, the people, the OPEX, CAPEX, all these things. And it is 50% of the work, and it is frankly invisible to the public eye, which is why it is hard.
That's a great metaphor of the tree. I guess, that thinking about, what branch is coming next, if you were to hypothetically think about employee number 11, what's the next skill that you'd be looking to bring onto the team for the next chapter?
Well, thank God. I during my career, I worked at BMW and Porsche, and I've been involved into. Keep in mind, the car industry is a much heavier industry rather than watchmaking. The level of complexity is the same because it's multiple metallic parts that actually have to work together to move a car or to move a set of hands or whatever. The scale is different, but the car industry has a much longer lead time. The width or the scale of the investment is like times 1,000 or 100. And therefore, strategy is vital for these companies. You have to know what you will do in 5 years, what you will think about in 10 years, and let's say which markets you want to conquer in 15. You cannot ignore these things. When in the watch industry, I often felt that because we can pivot quicker, the strategy was often too ignored. So when I started this company, I had a precise, and I still have, a precise launch sequence. Every year, I know which product I will launch. As a matter of fact, I always work on the next 3 years in parallel at different stages. And same goes, so that's for the leaves, and same goes for the roots, because when you know how you want to grow the leaves, all you have to do is to do a symmetry down, and you know how many people you need on the bottom. So I can already tell you, for example, next year I plan to hire one more watchmaker. I will have somebody in quality control, and I need also to hire a full-time accountant now, because the outside person we work with is complaining that the volume of transactions and the volume of lines basically that you have to handle is becoming too much for a part-time job. So I already know 2026, that's the money I need to spend. Has to go. It's sometimes depressing because the to-do list of the stuff you need to acquire never ends. But I should not complain. Frankly, we are living the dream. The level of traction we receive is I could have never dreamed about having such a positive response to this. Like, people click with what we do, people understand, people seem to, even if they don't acquire the watches, at least cheer us on the sidelines to say, look, good job, guys, at least you gave it a go, you tried, and then the effort is rewarded with the emotion we receive back. So that's very encouraging for all of us.
Yeah, it's been great to see the rapid pace of in the these first few years. Now, you mentioned your product plan is extends many years into the future, and it sounds like the concept is to come out with a completely new movement with a new product every single year. It's a pretty ambitious pace. Do you feel like this is going to be sustainable for you in the long term?
The only two guys that I know who achieved that over a long period, and I mean over a decade, are Maximilian Busser and François-Paul Jaune, to my knowledge. So it is proven to be feasible. Both of them grew quite a bit of white hair in the process, so it's starting on the sides here, as you can see. But no, more seriously, it is possible with two conditions. The first one is extreme discipline in the work feed. So as I said, I'm always building 3 movements in parallel. And if you drop one of these projects, then you will create a hole in the future. So as we speak, I am finalizing the manufacturing of the Quantième Annuel. So we check every part, we quality check, we test the dimensions, etc. So that's more the execution. No, it's more even the controlling phase. Then the movement for next year, we are finalizing the technical plans. We have secured the capacity. We are now paying the deposits, let's say, to lock the machines, reserve the gold, etc. So that's the execution phase. And the movement for the year after, we are still constructing it. So that's the heavy brainstorming when I say, no, I need to move this screw, I need that barrel to be smaller, please, move that pivot 5 mil up, no, 5/10 up, etc., etc. And then we have to do the ping pong between the creative input and the technical input. And that's the part that we love the most here, but it's also the most difficult because you have to make clear choices, and this is where you basically take the risk. I give you one example. It was back in 2021 when I finalized the first caliber, the 233, which is the first caliber of the Mirage. When came the time to order the components, Nicolas placed 2 offers on the table side by side, and I will remember my whole life. He said there is the real offer and there is the dreamy offer. So, and the real offer was to make the movement in brass because we had reasonable lead times, a decent price, or I would say a realistic price, and the dreamy offer was the gold movement with a stupidly long lead time because the suppliers have to all of a sudden dedicate a machine to do it, so it takes much longer time, etc. And the price just explodes. It's not just more double; you go times 4 or 5 because you go from an industrial process to a prototyping process, so to speak. And yeah, now it's history. But I took the dreamy offer, Nicolas. I still remember he was very concerned. He was like, Sylvain, this is professional suicide. I don't understand why you do this. You are a smart guy. Why do you need to? He was very concerned. I'm still shaking remembering this discussion because he was truly concerned. He was like, I don't understand. You have a good job at Breitling. You do this on top. I know your wife. Why do you need to create so much trouble? Just make it in brass, for God's sake. No one cares.
It was interesting to see the outcome of that because I think the gold movement plates and bridges, at least to my perception of how the Mirage was received in the market, was the gold movement was a pretty big part of that narrative and of tying everything together. Do you feel like that was the right decision after all this time?
For me, the Mirage is my ultimate expression of the dress watch. So. And a dress watch should be manual, thin, precious metal. I would say these are the 3 core elements that I consider to tick the box of being a dress watch. And if I want to have the ultimate expression of that, precious metal, that criteria should be pushed to the max. So I was like, okay, so same goes for manual and same goes for thin. So I went as thin as I could, even developed a complication around that. So it's the inverted end stack to make the case bend even smaller, even thinner, sorry. And on the precious metal side of things, I pushed it to the max and I said, okay, let's do a full gold watch. So even the spring bars are in gold but it's a double-edged sword in the sense that it also bumps the price to a stupid level. I remember some discussions with people who told me, look, young man, nobody knows you. You sell a 3-hand watch for 60 G's. Who do you think you are? Yeah, and I still have that sometimes. And I understand. This is 3 times more expensive than a 3-hand at one of the Trilogy brands, for example. Trinity brands, Holy Trinity brands, sorry. So to answer your question, I think I do not regret this decision. And even if I will go even further and say that even if he had failed with his decision made, I would have still feel safer deep inside, because I would have reacted like, okay, I tried my absolute hardest and it didn't work. The worst would have been to take the realistic offer. Let's imagine it doesn't work and I don't sell the watches, and I go, oh my God, what did I do? What if I had done the gold movement? Maybe the output would have been different. So I'm glad I didn't do it. And on a more philosophical level, we have only one life. I'm not saving lives making watches, so I think it's almost my duty as a creative person to come up with stuff that moves people. Yeah, I'm just doing my job right. I like to believe, like creative people, we should turn the knob to the max and give feelings to people when we create stuff.
Well, I think that's a perfect segue to, a little bit more conversation around the products themselves. So, you launched the Mirage, obviously the asymmetrical time-only watch, and followed it up with an extremely symmetrical watch that's also quite complicated. So what should collectors take away from this progression of these products?
And it's a huge mess. No, but more creative. So there are two things. There is the macro level. As you know, the last decade has been extremely prolific for the independent brands. I think this has 2 sides to it. First, you have a first wave of independence like Maximilian Busser, Urwerk, François-Paul Jaune is definitely part of it. Mother, I forget some brands, but Carry also is part of this. Definitely Recep. I would say this is the first generation that emerged in the early 21st century, so early 2000s. They paved the way for us with a much higher level of trauma that we have to suffer. I talk very often with Maximilian Busser, with the Recepi brothers. They tell me how hard it has been compared to us. Like keeping my struggle is nothing compared to the road that Max has to walk on for a decade. It was much harder. And second, I also think, I won't give names, but that the established brands sort of struggle to reinvent themselves a bit. There has been, especially during COVID and post-COVID, a lack of creativity, maybe a bit of risk management to not do something too crazy because it's not the time to risk it all. And the mix of these two things, where you have on one hand huge conservative brands that have been basically pushing the same narrative to you for 30 years, on the other side, independent brands which through extreme pain paved the way to survive. And this is the context in which I come on the scene. Like I would say myself, Simon Brett, we are in a new wave of independence. And all of a sudden we have client reassurance, because the first wave of indies went like, okay, but they survived, so these guys can actually make it. And I think the doubt or the reassurance factor is actually what François Paul and Max had to fight against, because everybody was like, look, you're going to die in 5 years. Why should I bother? And now 20 years later, you realize these guys are still here. Not only they are here, but they are having, a very successful business. Same goes, you could even apply it to Richard Mille. Richard Mille is an independent that came and built himself up to, I think it's like over $1 billion of turnover a year. It's crazy. Started from absolutely zero, ex nihilo. So this is this is the scenario in which we come in. So for me, it is a very favorable scenario, and I think if we want to establish a brand name and build a narrative, we need very distinctive products. We need to carve a niche which we can own. I do not think following an existing recipe will ever surpass an existing recipe. It's sad to say, but which is why people told me, but why is it so different? I was like, look, if it's to do, I'm a collector myself, if it's to do another 3-hand round watch, I'd rather buy a Calatrava because I dig Patek. Why should I, try to iterate on that? At least
so you're not gonna try to make a Royal Oak.
No, exactly, because I especially in our industry, the clientele are often wealthy, highly educated, and you will not trick the clientele by making them buying B options, plan Bs. Mm-hmm. No, these guys, when they like an aesthetic, they will dig around and say, oh, that's the original. No, I like that aesthetic, I like that vibe. That's the apex predator product in that segment. This is what I'm going to aim at. And this is actually why we have such what I call a black and white market. I've seen it at Breitling. I keep seeing it at my now and with some friends. The market became very contrasted in the sense that either you have full traction and it's too much. It's like we currently have 10x demand on all the Mirage products and the Quantième for that matter. And I have some other friends who say, look, I don't understand. In the course of 12 months, demand dropped to almost complete silence because the market is very laser focused on some things.
Yeah, there's kind of an all or nothing aspect to it.
Yes, exactly. And which is why, coming to the first part of your question, is why I try to build a stable brand with multiple legs to stand on. So people were surprised to see how different the Quantième is to the Mirage. We clearly made it on purpose. The goal was to do a strict opposite of the Mirage. So the Mirage is asymmetric, the Quantième is round. One is technically simple, the other is complicated. The first one is thin when the other one is thicker. So it could not be further apart from the first creation. And the goal in that process is to show the brand amplitude, the creative amplitude. And if I succeed in anchoring the Quantième I would say, in the equity of the ecosystem of Berneron, then all of a sudden I have the whole bandwidth to play with. Because I said, look, A is mine, but Z is also part of my brand language, so to speak. But it is very risky. I had this discussion with Hugo, my partner, multiple times. He was like, Sylvain, look, do you need to put yet again another risk? Because the Quantième is by no means capitalizing on the success of the Mirage. And that was his fear. He was like, I don't understand. Why you took so many risks and now you're willing to do it again. Why? But I think on the long run, it pays. It will. I'm confident it will pay good dividends because, as I said, then you can own a territory. If I decided to duplicate the Mirage recipe, I would have probably cornered myself into a much tinier brand language. And therefore, in 10 years, if I do the Quantième, people will say, oh, this is not you. Which is a reaction that I already received after 2 years of existence. So I let you imagine what would have happened if I would have waited for a decade.
Yeah. Well, when you turn the watches over, they have a little bit more in common. You know, it seems like there's kind of already a house style of finishing that is starting to emerge. And I think one of the most obvious ways that presents itself is in the kind of your unusual approach to kind of the Geneva stripes. Can you talk us through kind of how that's applied and, you know, and the other visual identity elements in the movement that, you know, create coherence between the otherwise kind of different products?
Mm-hmm. So I think it's also cool in that because decoration alone and finishing in a movement says a lot about the person behind, the person who is behind the project and the product. So I am not a watchmaker. Therefore, I have no admiration for perlage, traditional Côte de Genève, or sandblasting for that matter, because these are so-called erasing techniques. These are techniques practiced by watchmakers because they of course use these techniques because this is what drastically diminish the rebound rate when you make parts. You can sort of, Geneva stripes is an abrasive technique in which you, line by line, erase the imperfections and finish the part. But they are, together with perlage, sandblasting, and Côte de Genève, so-called erasing decoration techniques. Me being a designer, and because I never suffered on the bench to make these components, I had the idea. I was like, look, how about we keep the set of decoration techniques to ornamentation techniques only. And as a matter of fact, I have on the movement anglage, which is ornamentation. You basically take volume away for the sole purpose of decorating, but you do not erase an imperfection. You add ornamentation on top of it. Same goes for guillochage, for grenage, etc., etc. So we at Berneron use a set of techniques of finishing. So our top bridges are guillochés, and we use the aesthetical code of Geneva stripes, because for me it's very important to have that bridge. I could have made a complete different shape, but I wanted to anchor the brand into, I'm also a vintage collector on the side, so I find a certain timelessness into some codes that exist in the watchmaking industry, and I'm not willing to break them all. I'd rather find my own recipe rather than reinventing completely everything. So I use the Geneva stripes, which are completely wavy on the Mirage, which are much straighter on the Quantième, but both of them are not filed into the movement. They are guillochés. So we are really talking a hard head which carves the metal line by line to do it.
And just to clarify, this is a fixed point graver on a CNC machine that is carving
exactly.
each line. Okay.
Yes, I had the romantic approach of doing it with a Rose engine, movement parts on a Rose engine. We tried for 6 months and we miserably failed. For one reason is there is a minimum thickness of a part that you need to use on a Rose engine, and if you don't do that, the torque of the Rose engine basically bends the parts. They start lifting like ships like this, which is not ideal to make movement bridges, as you can imagine. So, but I tried, almost burned myself because that costed quite a bit of money and time to do that, until we reverted to a CNC technique, which are pneumatic machines and therefore a lot less torquey and a lot less vibrations. And therefore you are able to carve the material while staying within the tolerances. And in that sense, I'm very happy because we have the best of both worlds. I have the very thin yet within the tolerances bridge combined with a very high level of decoration, which can only be achieved through that technology. But if I had the chance, and if somebody finds a way to bend the laws of physics, I'm happy to revert back to a Rose engine. If somebody, only God knows, maybe somebody will work on a pneumatic Rose engine. I have no idea. But this is out of my skill set. But if somebody finds a way to do it, that'd be still open to do these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the CNC guilloche is something that we do see more of, not only, mainly in the context of dials on the movement, is still pretty unusual and pretty interesting. Now, all of these decisions that you've taken together, like you pointed out, have led to a lot of demand. And so I noticed that you do something a little bit different with pricing. You have preferential pricing for early orders, and then a step up. Just talk me through the rationale behind this model. And I'm just curious, do you think that this structure shapes the types of collectors that are attracted to your watches?
So the reason why we do it, so every piece that we launch, there is a preferential price in year 1 and 2. So effectively, I will take the most recent example, the Quantième. If you acquire a year 1 piece, it's 120, year 2 is 130, and the definitive price, which has been set since day 1, is 140. As a matter of fact, we've sold the first year of production based on a dummy, and let me take it now just to illustrate on the screen for the viewers. It's not even a metal dummy. I'm talking this product. So it's a 3D print plastic dummy, which you cannot even see the colors. You can only put it on your wrist and have a very vague idea of what 120,000 Swiss francs will give you. So, and we had almost 50 collectors who agreed to give us a 60,000 Swiss francs deposit based on that plastic dummy. And from an entrepreneur perspective, me as a collector, I would never give you that kind of money based on that. Never. And I have to be honest and say it to myself and say it publicly. You show me this, you ask me 60 G's, I say, look, young boy, come back when you have a watch and I will consider it. Let's be honest, yeah? 60 G's based on that. And I think that level of courage, and it is true mentoring with money. You mentor a young company to say, look, guys, we believe in you. Here is my hard-earned money. Go ahead and make your dream project. It is a huge commitment. I could go bankrupt and none of these guys would only God knows what would happen with the money. Don't worry, I'm serious. The company will not go bankrupt. And we even have, for the record, refound legal lines when you get an allocation for us, which is if I'm not able to deliver within 12 months after the delivery deadline we committed on, you are allowed to ask for a refund. So I have an incentive to be on time as well. Mm-hmm. But yes, coming back to the progressive price, this is why. And I think we have to reward the collectors who take the risk to give us the money when the watch doesn't exist. And to give us the money when the watch hasn't been accepted yet. If you want to get a Mirage from us, let's say a stone dial now, almost a year and a half after the launch, when the watch has been widely approved and ordered, etc., you take a much lower risk rather than somebody who ordered it 2 years ago. And I think risk has to be rewarded. So in that sense, I treat early collectors almost like business partners.
Mm-hmm. Patrons in a very real sense.
Yes.
Now, just sort of an elephant in the room is that, an early piece, a Mirage 38, recently sold for something like 250,000 Swiss francs, several times MSRP. And obviously that can kind of change the way collectors behave. I'm just curious, what's been the real world impact to you and just sort of your day-to-day interactions with collectors? Obviously you can't control what's going on in the market, but what change has there been, if any, into your day-to-day interactions with collectors?
I had a few funny interactions, like one collector especially he doesn't have a huge collection, but the Mirage really captivated his attention, and as a matter of fact, he has a pair. One we delivered last year, one we delivered this year. So he really went for a first piece, liked it very much, saw the second one on another collector and said, I want to complete the set. So he has the 2 metal variants, which is a huge honor for us, especially because he has, I think the collection is 25, 30 pieces. So it is a substantial collection, but we are not talking hundreds of thousands of pieces like some of our clients sometimes have. And he kept telling me, look, your watches are really like top of the food chain within my collection. And when the Prussian Blue converted to the amount you described at Philips in the auctions, he was like, oh wow, this is very like surprising, very early, blah blah blah. And 2 weeks after, he called me and said, oh, my insurance guy is a watch guy and heard about that, and he wants to reconsider the value of the insurance of my collection to a level that your two watches, and he said, your two bloody watches are now like doubling the value of my entire collection just because of that. So we were laughing, but at the same time not really, because it's still the same product. Sure. But why should you pay double? So it has real consequences on the way a collector sees his watches. I have another collector who told me I used to wear it almost daily because I love it so much, and it triggers discussions with people which are not even watch guys, because they like the visual bend effect. It's a shiny object which at the same time feels precious but not very serious because it's all bent. So it's a very magnetic sort of object in real life, even if you don't like watches. And he said, and now that I see the new valuation, I tend not to wear it as much. We, of course, received an excess of emails of collectors that want only this product. I should make a quick comment on that, and let's say that this is not when one watch sells for $250,000 and within the next 3 days you send me an email to say, I want to buy a Mirage Prussian Blue, thank you, ciao. You're not displaying a very mindful way of wanting to interact with us. Let's put it this way. So these are definitely not prioritized emails. I should be quite transparent about that, simply because I have nothing against speculation. I haven't tried to interact with the collectors who sold our pieces. I haven't felt insulted by any means. When we sell a watch, there is a transfer of property. If that person needs or wants to sell the watch, it's his or her right, and I have not my word to say about that. Because I've also been a collector myself. As a matter of fact, when I founded this business, I liquidated 25 of my 30 pieces in a very short amount of time because I needed the cash to make that bloody movement. And I sold some watches, and then one of these watches I had, as a matter of fact, acquired less than a year ago. And the seller, previous seller, called me and said, oh, are you trying to make money on the watch that I sold you? And I was like, no. And just the fact that you call me and make me justify is I'm actually not cool with that. Mm-hmm. So I don't do it to others. If you sell something, it's no longer yours, and I have to, and if I believe my watches are worth 200,000 Swiss francs, I should have the courage to price it this way. So this is not my wish. So to conclude on these prices, I am somehow, the brand, I should say, is flattered because it's still a good recognition for the work that has been placed. Me as a collector, and it's Berneron Sylvain, the collector, speaking, I do not think a Mirage is a six-figure watch. A lot of my friends tell me you are stupidly wrong, this thing will go to $500,000, blah, blah, blah. Only God knows. Me as a collector, I never ventured into these heights, so I could not tell you. And I guess at the end, I am a passenger of that bus. I cannot control whether it goes further or backwards or whatever. This is not my decision. What I can do as a brand is guarantee that I will not increase my pricing. My pricing hasn't moved. The way we allocate watches hasn't changed. And I will keep doing it because I believe that the hard base is fundamental for the long-term stability of the brand. And I think the independence, the two biggest risks that we face is being not stable enough, not reactive, not stable, and then you break trust with collectors, and also you break the narrative. It's like you make one amazing watch and you disappear for the next 4 years because you're too busy trying to catch your breath, and also then you lose people's attention because you don't have enough to say. But it is terribly hard to stay vocal when you're, and I could make the metaphor, try to run and keep a good conversation with somebody. if I make you run very fast, you will quickly struggle to keep that conversation going. And it's pretty much, if I had to make a metaphor, this is what we young indies, and it's me, Simon, Recep, all the guys, we are trying to run as fast as we can because you collectors push us very fast. And we have to keep talking. So it is a demanding exercise, to say the least.
Well, I think that's a good note to end on. Appreciate the perspective on how the market performance has translated over it into your day to day. Just as a kind of final question, obviously you're a designer. Inspiration is something that is key to your success throughout your career. What's something that has inspired you this week?
This week, it's only the early week. It's a hard question.
Okay, we'll go past 7 days.
Maybe what has inspired me. So it's definitely not the past week, but I've been inspired by the previous generation of indie brands. Like I said, I talk very often to Max Busser. We exchange. I admire, and very often when I feel down, he remembers me how much worse it could be, and how much harder it could have been. So I'm inspired by the people who did that journey before. I'm also inspired by the suppliers around us. So this year I could answer. I had a very tedious investigation going on with Fabien here in the office and with a case maker on a special thermic project that we work on, to say the least. And I've been inspired because these guys realized or went very high on basically tackling the problem from a different angle. It's like, it doesn't work from the front door, let's try from the window. It doesn't work from the window, let's try from the roof. And at the end, they were able to crack the thing and find the formula to solve the issues that we had. And I've been deeply inspired because what inspired me is not the result, is the not complaining and keep trying from a different angle. I think that's very inspiring, like to not give up. And when you get rejected, whether it is by the market, by somebody, it doesn't mean it won't work. It just means it hasn't been solved yet. And I think that is very inspiring. And it links to what I tell to my guys all the time, is that the mentality here is we never lose. It's my motto now. I say to people, we never lose. We either win or we learn. Sometimes these are very expensive lessons. But if you see it this way, you become joyfully unstoppable. Because either you win or you learn. But so I think this is, and if I can inspire people to do not only watches but everything in life, and seeing this way, you can't win every battle, but if you learn from the failures, at least you can try again the next time.
Sounds like perseverance is really the name of the game in independent watchmaking.
And maybe in life, it's probably the same in friendship, in marriage, in family, we all have our burden to carry, and then I think keeping a smile on and trying on and living to fight another day, as I say, is probably the name of the game. Or at least I like to believe, and this is what kept me not 100% of the time, but most of the time joyful in this process, because God knows we had tough times to go through, but we live the dream and we keep going step by step, hiring one more person at the time and creating one more watch, and then developing this small company, which slowly becomes much bigger than what I could ever dream of. But it is a very satisfying process to be part of.
Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on. Sylvain, thank you so much for spending some time with us. And for the listeners, thank you as always for listening.
Thank you very much for having me.